So I'm just going to record. So right now it is recording. Welcome, folks. If we end up on Facebook Live, cool. If not, you'll see the post afterwards. But right now, I'm going to make sure that Skip, you should now have the ability to share anything you wish. Today, friends, we're talking about, broken eighths for one thing, and more about the space between the notes, one of my favorite topics. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm perplexed. I'm not sure why that doesn't accept it. The chat accept that because it's small. But okay. So the thing about the spaces between the notes, that's actually a page on the first page or so of the third page of, I think it's page 8 actually. But there's those other pages that talk about
Yes.
the what page what's on, and the acknowledgments, and then it comes up with this thing that says spaces between the notes, and then that has to do with really pay attention to what's happening with the flow of eighth notes and the spaces between them, specifically for this style, which is kind of like, not like Brazilian, a little bit looser, but not like Afro-Cuban, not as tight as that, not as staccato. It's more legato, but not as legato as New Orleans. So it's like, wait a minute, where does that fit in? So it ends up being like, a food analogy would be how much spice you're going to put in it.
All the spice.
Not all spice, but the amount of spices you would put,
because I like spice so much.
That would really change it up.
My life, I crave spices. Yeah, no, that's a good analogy though. Real good.
So in that first page, it talks about being able to keep those eighth notes. It shows with the samba bass line, because how I got to the broken eighth style that was happening from the early 60s was I was into Brazilian music, so I understood that a little bit more for sure.
Right.
So I just came from there. And then I heard in my study for putting together the fusion stuff, a lot of that came from that same feel, but looser or tighter compared, depending on who played it, to what was going on with the hands for even bossa nova, samba, boogaloo, all those kinds of things. And the broken eighth came out of that.
Right.
And then when Jon Christensen, the great Norwegian drummer, started playing with Keith Jarrett and Jan Geberik, then that was, he had been coming from Philly Joe Jones, but it ended up with this straight eighth kind of feel. So he was a model for being able to do this, as well as Tony Williams, Jack DeJohnette, and a bunch of other guys. Alphonse Mouzon, Bruno Carr, a lot of guys that many people haven't heard of them. We're now streaming on Facebook.
Yes, we should be. And I streamed it to a different place. For some reason, that worked. So right now it's going to my drummer page. But
how apropos.
But what I'll do is I'll share it now with, let's just make sure. We've had a little technical difficulty here this morning, folks. And now, of course, my page doesn't want to load. But here it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do is
start again.
I'm going to share this on my personal page. And then people, because I get more traffic there. I don't use my business pages very much. Now let's go to personal and get this link on there, and then people can watch here, and that'll be just groovy and ducky. Yeah, okay, here we go. So I'll keep an eye on things and see if we get any questions or anything. Cool. All right. Let me turn the volume down here. Well, speaking of Christensen, I mean, geez, when I first heard him, it was in the 70s, some of the ECM stuff. He was on a lot of those recordings. And
hundreds.
Of course, with Keith Jarrett, I loved his work with Keith, Nude Ants, I think he was on New Dance. Then there's another
Yeah,
one.
and that was later. That was end of the 70s.
Oh,
You know.
the one that has the original My Song on it.
Hmm.
Love
It
that.
was one called Belonging.
Yes, yeah. Then the Vanguard, live at the Vanguard. Then there's another one called Personal Mountains, which is a
Yeah,
live.
and there's a long solo on there too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And really powerful pieces. But yeah, he had that ride cymbal thing going on.
Well,
And
it was
I never remember how to pronounce the guy's name. Terje Ripdahl or something like that.
Terje.
Terje. He also. I have some video of him on a TV show with from the 70s with Terje, and I think it was Mikkels. It's the guy who recorded with Miles in the 80s. Kind of anyway, a trumpet player. And just really great playing, you know. I love that
Wallace
guy.
Roney? Not Wallace Roney.
Pickelberg. Mickelberg.
Oh, Mickelberg. No, okay, somebody from Europe. Yeah, I don't know about that. You got me.
He's from well, I don't know where, somewhere in Europe though. Scott Turney's watching. Hey Scott, how's it going, man? Scott and I have a couple things in common. He loves cars, and so do I, and he loves music, and he's a great keyboardist, and I'm not. But I appreciate good keyboard. Good to see you, Scott. Yeah, so let's go back. I want to dial back. We were talking about the broken eighths. So you, what's the name of the book that's in, Skip, for people? So if they want to
Yeah,
know.
it's called Rhythmic Concepts, Broken Eighth Note Feel. Hold on. I can show you a cover of it.
Yeah, share anything you want to.
It ends up being...
Oh, eighth note feel. Okay, cool. Rhythmic concepts. I love that. Yeah. Broken eighth note feel. So just because you're the author, right? This is your baby.
Yeah.
You wrote this.
Yeah, for the class. I did a class 15 weeks on this.
How do you describe, just for people watching, how do you describe broken eighth notes?
They're not, okay, we're back to the beginning. Okay, so for me, it was, how do I play this style that Tony Williams, Jack DeJohnette, and many other guys from in the 60s into the 70s, and Yoon Christensen, like we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Other guys, Peter Donald, later in the 70s, great at this too, was that the flow was based on, the jazz time feel was based on eighth notes, not on triplets, like it had been for so many years before. Okay. Or not even dotted 8/16ths, because that was part of the stuff in the Chapin books. But this was based on eighth notes itself. Mm-hmm. But not eighth notes like Afro-Cuban, not as strict as staccato as that. Looser, but not as loose as New Orleans, and a little bit looser than the 8ths and 16ths from Brazil. So that page 8 that explains the spaces between the notes, I was coming from Brazilian music because I was into that and trying to develop control playing that style. Listened to a lot to Damum and Sergio Mendes and Ayoto Moreira and Flora Purim and all kinds of stuff. Even the Zimba Trio from Brazil. I got to see those guys live. Strange. They were playing at a club across the street from where I was playing, and went in and was like, well, I know this music. And
that's cool.
So it ended up being that spaces between the notes, which I was trying to achieve it by taking away the bass drum ostinato that would be in samba or bossa nova or Brazilian music, and then just playing that feel with the hands, hi-hat on 2 and 4, and then incorporating it into the flow of the notes, not playing it on 2 and 4. Okay. And so this whole thing started to be a style that I could do, and then I don't know, mid 80s or so, I started doing it at Berkeley. And Ian Froman, who had been one of the students at school, one of my students actually, and then went and studied with Elvin at a drum camp or something. So we're trying to get him to do the class because he could do the bejabbers out of this.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want to do it. So, okay, I'll do it myself. So I wrote the book and did the class.
Yeah.
You have to go to 13 meetings and a picnic in order to get something okayed for it to be a class. And I did all that. And so it was a class for many, many years. And it was all about working up that thing, spaces between the notes. And if you play it with your hands, we'll see if this will work for on the across listing, but and so those two accents that I'm playing out are alternating, starting with the right 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then ding, jutta ding, jutta ding, jutta ding, jutta ding, jutta ding, jutta ding for the ride. Still reinforced in this subflow underneath it. And it turns out that that feel is this.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would start out with guys being able to play this. They would think I was nuts, but this is the center for the broken eighth and actually for the fusion stuff, how I developed it, was being able to control that subdivision. And that's the spaces between the notes. No bass ostinato, but that flow of the eighth notes.
Interesting. So I did hear a lot of ECM stuff in the 70s. I was a teenager. I didn't appreciate it as much then as I did later and now especially. But I think my first exposure lesson-wise to broken eighth notes was with a real good drummer about 45 minutes south of me in Cortland is Danny D'Imperio.
Yeah, a great big
Danny
name
had
drummer
played
too.
with Woody. I never saw him with Woody. I saw him with Maynard, and I saw him with his own trio, which he played bass because he's a great bass player. But so taking lessons, I probably mentioned it before. I don't always remember what I say, but lessons with Danny were cool because he's a really good bass player, and so he'd be the bass player in my drum lessons. But he wrote out he calls it the Erto Samba, which there is the reinforcement of the bass drum. Do 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 do. So not necessarily not what you were showing just now, because you didn't have the reinforcement that did. Yet at the same time, when I would back off on the support of bass drum or hi-hat on 2 and 4 or whatever, I discovered I was able to play some broken up stuff that kind of sounded cool, you know. And of course, I was totally copying Christensen and DeJohnette.
Yeah.
100%. Mostly those two at the time. Peter Donald. I forgot about Peter Donald. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Alphonso was on, and Eric Krivda also did that kind of style, depending on the temperature, the tempo, when they work with McCoy. And even for Alphonse in the first Weather Report recording, moving more to fusion, was that tune called Seventh Arrows. Was a samba. The phrasing was in 3, but it was still that samba kind of thing. And Miroslav was playing that bass line, but not so much Alphonse. He was breaking it up, and it was moving much more towards that broken eighth. So that kind of style fit many different things style-wise. It wasn't just jazz, it wasn't just Brazilian, it wasn't just fusion. It was something that worked between all of those, depending on what was going on in the music. Because if the bass player is walking and you do this, it doesn't work so good.
Yeah.
Because then it's pegged back to that subdivision that's different.
Well,
but that allowed the bass players to play phrases, ostinato phrases, and break it up like the drummers could.
Well, you know, people like, let's say, Pelle Danielson, maybe Eberhard Weber, maybe, I don't know. There are a lot of other ones. I just can't think of their names now. Pale is a great example of the perfect complement as a bassist for the Broken Eighth style.
Harold Anderson.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
dynamite. And he played in Mascalero with Jon Christensen in the 80s. He did 2 recordings for ECM.
Wow.
And there's some videos where they do this with Bobo Stinson and a young trumpet player and saxophone player that actually ended up coming to the United States. But I think Peter Malvoy was the trumpet player. But yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious. Well, I'm having a lot of random thoughts. I'll try to stay focused. One of the things when I take off to go to Mexico again next Thursday.
Bon
did I tell you I'm
voyage.
going? I just
Yes.
found out, actually. I'm going next Thursday morning to San Luis Potosi, Mexico, to do some work, speak at a conference, and work with patients one-on-one. I have a lot of research to do, and Thelma is with us. Thelma Ramos from Oaxaca. Welcome, bienvenido. Thelma, ¿cómo estás, mi amiga? It's good to have you here. We will talk later today, too. So I'm going back. Yeah, but what I want to do is get together all the weather report stuff and start with the first album. I want to go through and I want to listen to all of it. I want to listen extra special attention going towards Mysterious Traveler because you played on that album. And so I need to go through this. It's kind of like reviewing history for me because of the evolution of the band is very interesting with each instrument. Let's say, well, bass mostly, and starting with Miroslav, I think, was the first. And who was the first drummer? Was it Alphonse?
Alphonse Mouzon. Yeah, Alphonse Mouzon.
Alphonse Mouzon. Yeah, then
Eric Krivda. And
yeah,
Herschel,
so
Herschel
Dwelling
Dwellingham.
and I plan to listen to all of that on the way because it's 3 planes and it's going to be a long ride. But that's okay. I don't care.
Yeah, Herschel Dwellingham was on, I think, Sweet Nighter. He played a couple of tracks on there. He was a drummer from Hartford or New Haven. He was like me. You just went in and did a couple of tracks, and then was gone. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question. I'm going to go off topic just a little. Did you ever work with Miroslav?
Yes. Yeah. After that, he and I got along. I'm not sure why, but in the 3 days that, because it was like, I don't remember a whole lot of it because I was like busy, but trying to play. But he was there the first 3 days that I was there for the recording, and he and I could play together. That's and nice. Then one day showed up, and he was sitting in the parking lot at Devonshire, the studios.
Yeah.
And he was there all day sitting in his car. It was like, what? And then I never saw him again until years later. Apparently he did out with Joe, because Joe kind of like ran the band. Wayne kind of like went along whatever Joe wanted to do. And so years later, Miroslav found me. I think I was in Cincinnati or something. And somebody called me and said, Miroslav's looking for it. And I was like, really? And so I went to New York and played with him in New York.
Oh.
With Chip Jackson and Phil Markowitz.
Oh, wow.
And I drove up and I did the rehearsal, and the next day we started. And it was like, and I had brought my little 18-inch bass drum stuff, the kit that I was playing. And then at the gig, he had set it up for me to play this huge Rogers kit, like a 24-inch bass, because it was And
like
so
so
for me, it was a disaster. I couldn't play this kit. And so it didn't go well. But, and then I saw him years later again. He was kind of nice to me, but it just kind of didn't work out. Kind of like the weather report thing didn't, but it wasn't because I wasn't trying. It was just that you just go and you see what you can do.
It's interesting.
But that's a whole experience that would take a while to go over.
It's interesting, like how some of the evolution occurs in these situations. I was talking with Joel Taylor last week, who I'd seen with Alan Holdsworth many times, then one time, maybe 6-7 years ago with Al Di Meola. And I loved how he played anytime I saw him. But, you know, he was describing these situations, like when he was working with Dave Carpenter, the great bassist who passed way too young years ago. It was Alan Holdsworth, Dave Carpenter, Joel Taylor, and then I think Joel got the call from Yanni, and so that's it. I'm going. I mean, it's a really good first class accommodations, 4 people per tour bus, 11 tour buses. I mean, I saw him with Yanni, as a matter of fact. The band was awesome. You know, compositionally, it was pretty interesting too. I think it appeals to a lot of people. But I mean, it was interesting. But he also, so he left. So Gary Novak came in. And that's where, you know, Joel was going to be on Alan's official last ever studio album 20 years ago, 16 Men of Tain. But Gary did it because Joel was out with Yanni. And then it evolved into Dave passed away and Ernest Tibbs came in. But it's all by recommendation, right? It's like who you know a lot of times. Well, you know how that is.
Yeah.
Rick Farabracci was invited to do the gig, but he couldn't. So Ernest Tibbs came in and worked with Alan for years, and then it evolved into another trio and another trio. But it was all like recommendations and people who knew people. And I'm not on subject with Broken Eighth Notes, but now that I went off on a tangent, I want to go back and say one of the other players I was listening to the other day, this Gary Peacock album from the 80s, maybe early mid-80s with Peter Erskine. They played very well together. A lot of beautiful Broken Eighth stuff on that, and I don't know the name of the CD, but Erskine.
Yeah, I don't either. But
did some cool
I would
stuff.
have to look through the collection and see, because it wasn't one that I listened to a lot. In any case.
Yeah, and me neither. Only like 2 songs I really loved on that.
Yeah, I listened to the ones with Joey Barron and stuff like that.
Oh man! So is Joey still playing? Is he still around? Where is he based?
New York.
Okay. Never seen him.
Yeah, I had when he was 15. He came to Berkeley for I think a few lessons in the summer of maybe 73, something like that. And I used to come up to Boston. Joe Hunt was my touchstone for Berkeley, and that's how I ended up there. But I came and I went to Joe's office. And it was funny then because the building was still like a hotel. You were in your office, but it also had a bathroom because it was a room from the hotel.
Oh.
And so you went in, was like, oh, wow, okay. And the student was Joey Barron. And Joey and Joe are still great friends. They still communicate. But Joey studied with Joe Hunt. And then he went back to New York, and he was always, reaching out to do jazz stuff. And he wanted to play with Carmen McRae, so he went out and stalked her. He drove out in his van to L.A. and actually got picked up, I think, for hanging out up the street from her house. But yeah, you have to listen to. There's a couple of recordings of the podcast of Pablo Held called Pablo Held Investigates, and there are a couple of 3-hour podcasts, I think, with Joey Barron. So it's like, if you want to know about this, you just have to. They're on YouTube.
I'll have to find that. It's funny. I have many recordings he's on. I think maybe some with Abercrombie too, but I've never seen him. I don't know anything about him.
Oh yeah, he can play. Yeah, he's in the Profiles book.
Yeah,
that Jazz Profiles book, and he's playing some fusion stuff. He was in a band with Red Rodney.
Really?
It was a fusion band.
Oh.
I don't remember.
Know Red?
No, but he was a cohort of Ira Sullivan's. And so I knew about it from like 1970. I knew about it. He was a bebop guy from the 40s.
Yeah, my dad had a lot of Red Rodney stuff, and it was all bop.
Hmm.
But uh, yeah, he went down another pathway musically, which was really cool. Ira
Well, he could play
Sullivan,
any
I
kind of
really
music.
need to get out some Sullivan and listen, because he's somebody I never checked out that much. And then when I started checking out recently, and you sent me some stuff, it's like, man, holy, yeah, he was great.
Yeah, yeah, and he, for me, I mean, he was a great guy to me. It was like one of those mentor kind of guys. But it, a lot of the mentor guys for me weren't drummers. They were either businessmen or other musicians. Joe Alexander, I think we talked about that. Uh, Set up my drums and play in his basement with him next to the furnace, you know.
Oh
And
yeah,
then the same thing happened with Vaughn Freeman. I got to work with him in like 1969, and then 70 with Ira. So it was
yeah,
all these guys that were real important, but they weren't important to a lot of other people, but they were to me. And
hmm
one of the big, great mentors for me early on was that actually got me into jazz was the stepfather of a little 10-year-old girl that I was on a TV show called the Big Five Show in Cleveland. And sometimes played in the house band. It was on live thing you did on Saturday mornings,
hmm
one of those kind of things.
back
And
when it
after,
used to be live.
right, and it would be like a polka band and some other kind of thing. And then, and this little girl was singing. She was 10, and she needed people to back her up. So Tommy Eisen, a guitar player, and he was in that Ricky Vack and the Rockaways band. We were in that band together. And the ones that were in the Rock and Roll Fame kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we played behind her. He said, "Oh, he liked the way I played," and he befriended me and started playing me jazz records, stuff like that. And then I ended up living at his house for a while, and so I had access to all of his music, and I used to babysit his kids and all that kind of stuff. And he was like just a business guy. And when I wasn't working, his parents owned a nursery garden
hmm
supply kind of thing. So whenever I couldn't get a gig, I would work with the plants and dig holes and stuff. So it was like really supportive, and then it went on. And then he was just an amazing kind of guy. He helped me. He and I built my sound system so I could listen to the music better, and
That's
it was
cool,
just
man.
it was all kinds of strange stuff that was like a dad, but not my dad.
I understand. It's mentorship. It's like Carl Allen says, mentorship is tough love sometimes, and you do it because you care about the person, and you point out the things that aren't up to standard where they should be in whatever capacity, and you compliment for the things that are. And I've been lucky to have a handful of mentors too. Really musically, just one drummer mentored. The rest were played other instruments, but
Right,
they taught me
right,
things that were
yeah,
so important.
like that saxophone player that you played with.
Yeah, David Castiglione, man. What's your intention, Scott? I don't know if you're still watching. Do you remember Dave Castiglione? We used to play at Swabies in Auburn with Ronnie France. It was sax, bass, drums trio, and it was just, when I say total freedom, I don't mean avant-garde, but freedom to be who you are when you play,
Hmm.
and play the way you want to interpret things. We would do standards, but maybe Autumn Leaves in 7. That was fun. But also when they got into the improvise. I don't know really much about theory, but there was some cool stuff going on, and a lot of rhythmic displacements that were fun. But the intention behind the notes was the biggest lesson I learned from him, and it really changed how I played immediately. Immediately.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
In
it's
fact,
great
I
to
think
find
I
out who you
started to
are.
play a lot less notes
Hmm.
because I went more from the feeling instead of filling up every empty space, because I couldn't think of where to put space.
Well, yeah, yeah. Nebulous is hard to hold.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure is. So who are like we you have recordings you've done where there's so many recordings, but like, do you have any recordings that stand out as, let's say, favorites that you've done where you're in, you're utilizing space, which you always do, but any special recordings or a broken eighth feel, anything special that you have done that you like best?
Yeah, that stuff that I did with Dewey in the 90s turned out to be a good day for me.
Well, I love, yeah, and I love that.
Yeah, so Ratman was really good, and Easy Come, Easy Go, Rockin' with Pete. There was some, it was all pretty much open. I didn't have to do any timekeeping so much with Dewey, but I would with Michael Bocian, who's the one that actually got the contract together, a guitar player. And then he played with Joey Lovano. He's on the non-app recording. And he was another Cleveland guy. He used to come and see us play at the Smiling Dog. And he was really
Michael Bocian?
Yeah. And he was really into Bill DeArango. And his recording that he did with I Am the Blues, Tom Rainey ended up playing on that one. But that was, yeah, it was some really nice stuff. There's a tune that was an outtake from the Mysterious Traveler recording, and that's on YouTube. It's called Miroslav's Tune. And then it's a long tune, like 6-7 minutes, and the second half of it ends up being not with the other drummer. He's not playing, I'm playing. Oh. And so you can actually hear me doing without any other drum stuff happening in it. And that's nice too, but it's not on a recording, it's just on YouTube.
Well, I'm looking it up right now. Miroslav's Tune.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Mysterious Traveler.
It comes up with that cover of the album, but it's an outtake. It was never on there, never released.
So,
and then it moves away from that thing of being in 4, and then like that thing was going to talk about today, the Rhythmic Matrix is being able to take, and like what I did on Nubian Sundance, was to play a different level at the time. When someone was playing one, I would play another.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing that's happening in that tune. And then he ends up dropping out, and it ends up being in 6, so that the whole thing of playing when you're in 2 or 4, you're phrasing 3 or 6, or other phrase lengths. So that thing is happening all the time. So you can have these other options rhythmically to use with the spaces between the notes. It keeps coming back to that same thing. But it's not all like...
It's one of my favorites too. I love that.
And so when they said, okay, what are you going to do with this? He already had a part.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Wow. That's
so he had it all down what he was going to do, and it was like really strong and felt good. So what am I going to do with this? So I had to figure out something to do, put my notes in between his notes, and then play it at a different level of the time.
Yeah.
So if you listen closely to the other track that I'm in, I'm playing notes that go in between and hold up a whole other scenario. And then it fits into that same kind of thing we talked about, where for me, the drums are like the canvas, and everybody does their painting on that canvas. Mm-hmm. And it can actually even be the frame holding that canvas. And that's what I was in that instance also.
Yeah.
But it's not anything to go in and talk about with anybody. You just have to do it. They don't want to hear all this stuff. They just,
No, that's why you're there, because they know you've just got something that's special to offer. So you go and you just do your thing. Interesting. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to this is going to be a weather report Mexico trip for me.
Yeah. Well, that live
album, I'll probably get up through around 8:30, and then I'll stop, because I'm extremely familiar from 8:30 on. Well, even the one with Birdland on it, I know that one well. I want to concentrate on the ones that came before, though. Oh,
Well, because the stuff before that, including stuff with Alphonse Johnson and Ira Krivda and all that, it was coming from a much more open kind of place. It was much more jazzy and sonically different. It wasn't getting towards, Joe Zawinul wanted it to be a funk band. And in fact, before before the one I did, Mysterious Traveler, Greg Errico from Sly and the Family Stone played that band
oh,
with
really?
Miroslav. And so Joe kept setting these things up so that it would get Miroslav to be funkier.
I see.
And it didn't happen. And I think my take on it is that was why they had a parting of the ways, was because he was much more classically trained oriented and jazz minded than funk minded, which is what it ended up being with, although Slim, Alphonso Johnson, could play jazz stuff. He was,
Yeah.
by that time, had already been with Santana and a whole bunch of other people when working with Njugu, who had also been with Miles and could play jazz stuff. The whole thing started to become much more like Freezing Fire and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, the recording after me, and it became much more uh, rhythmically linked to like one thing, not a bunch of different layers. And then it changed again with Alex Acuna and Manolo Bedrino.
Phileas.
Hold on
It
just
did.
a second.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It changed a lot. And I think, with respect to everybody, of course, I was really into that particular personnel, and then afterwards, right up through, Procession and Domino Theory with Omar and Victor Bailey, which in some ways I like that better than the band with Jocko. But then again, how can I say something? It's not that anything's better. It's personal preference. It could be my mood, who I want to hear, what I want to hear. But um, I don't remember. So this is sort of a joke. It's part joke, part true. So I was born breech baby, feet first. I didn't know this until my 59th birthday last June. My mom told me. I said, Mom, that explains everything. It explains my whole life, why I've done everything backwards. I've done everything in the wrong order. Yet, well, so musically, if I look, once I got plunged into Return of Forever, Headhunters, Mahavishnu, well, Weather Report came a little after that for me. And by the time I got into Weather Report, Birdland was a big thing. And then Erskine joined. And then, well, I didn't even get into Miles until I was really first year of college. Somebody laid Four and More on me, and it's like, oh, okay. And then My Funny Valentine. And then that started. But I was totally into the 60s Miles, not the 70s so much, 60s. But I never went back till I was in my 30s to really start looking at Train and earlier Miles and earlier Train. And I bought all the Weather Report stuff, the early stuff. I have all of them on vinyl, but I don't listen to them that much because I was into a different sonic place. But now, completely love the openness, and I really prefer a lot of the earlier stuff, and I haven't listened to much of it recently, but I'm looking forward to checking it out. Probably like the first 4 or 5 albums are the ones I really want to focus on.
Yeah, it changed with the one that I did. They were going for, that's when we did that without any bass player after the first 3 days.
Really?
And then they brought Alphonso Johnson in after that, and he wasn't there. He just went in and played his parts with the recorded stuff that was already done. So there's a book that somebody about the real Weather Report or something, and they talked to Slim, Alphonso Johnson, and say, oh, how did they do that? And he said it was all tracked, but it wasn't tracked. That's what they did for him. And he didn't know, even though we were friends, he didn't know that was me on there. This is like, total disconnect for like what was going on because he wasn't there. So it's in this book, but it was all done in the studio, and they lucked out being able to piece those parts together, when in reality it was it was by conscious decision for me to play what I did to do that, to fit in and still work. I don't think that they actually believed, Joe Zawinul in particular, thought that it worked. And the story that came back to me was they tried to get me out of the recording, but because of the way they did it, they couldn't do it. So it stayed. But that's one of the things that kind of, I'm kind of biased about it, but it made it be what it was because that other layer was in there.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I think that they kind of lucked out, and so did I. Because I didn't end up on the cutting room floor.
Right. Stu Heinrich is with us. Stu's a great guitarist.
Is he from up by you?
Yeah, he lives in Syracuse area. He's across town from me. Stu, I owe you big time. Like, we got to get together and hang. Thelma's still here. Mary Lambert is here. Scott Turney. Great. It's good to see everybody. Well,
and I'd like to thank the people too that listen in that don't. They somehow get this. Maybe it's through through the Facebook end of it. Yeah, the YouTube part of it, because people are buying some of the books. There's a guy from Maryland that has all the books. It was great. It's Thomas Bollinger. And I really appreciated people communicating with me. It's, when people buy stuff from me, I say, thank you for the purchase, and please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any comments or questions. And rarely do people ever get back to you, but sometimes they do. And it's great for me to find out how they're doing with stuff or find out if they have questions, because buying a book is it's like talking about dancing. It doesn't quite make all the connections.
I know. I know, it's interesting. You signed my book. Thank you very much. And when people buy direct from me through my website, they save a little money over Amazon, but I sign every book. Thank you for your support and this and that, and because I want them to know I really genuinely appreciate you buying my Parkinson's book. Just trying to get the second book out here in the next few days, but I'm going back to something I was thinking about a while ago. I don't know which album it's on, but it's a Weather Report thing, and I think the first song or the second song is called The Moors.
Yeah, Song of the Moors, yeah. That's Eric Krivda.
I always loved that song. It's just the feel. I don't even know who's playing on that.
I'm not sure. I think it's, wait a minute, I can tell you. Because in the book you have, it originally looked like this.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh.
And then there's all the listings of all the tunes that were the ones to support that.
Did you ever work with Charles Lloyd?
Did I? No. I just listened to him a lot and talked to him. I sent his wife some pictures of him and Joe Zawinul with Ken Latterly because I was there, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you sent me this one, I think, is Keith Jarrett, Jack DeJohnette with Charles Lloyd in the mid-'60s. Was smoking, man.
Mm.
That was early Jack being Jack and Keith being Keith.
Yeah,
Charles was ahead of his time.
That was from back in 66 or something like that, 66, 68. And I saw them live, but it was Paul Motian and I think maybe even Charlie Hayden and Keith Jarrett and, no, it might have been Ron McClure. Ron McClure, Paul Motian, and Keith Jarrett and Charles Lloyd. And it was like, really? And they were playing in a gym. And it sounded terrible. I mean, the acoustics were terrible, but yeah. I can't find Song of the Moor that I have is with Bob Moses on a Ernie Krivda recording. And it's one of the ones for the Bembe Nanyugo examples.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd have to look that up it was either Alphonso or Eric Krivda.
I think on this same album might be that one where Ralph Towner plays 12 string, I think, and
Yeah.
he was just practicing or something, and they recorded it and said, "That's it, you're done." Like they got exactly what they wanted, and I mean his intro on that, whatever song that is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I've known Ralph since, well, with Oregon,
Wow,
at the very beginning of that, and
wow.
he played at that club a lot, so we would get to hang out. And I sat in and played with them one time, and they were playing, and I picked up a cowbell and I hit it once, and Ralph stopped, said, "No, you can't do that."
No cowbell.
No, it was like, oh no.
Less cowbell.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny.
He lives in Rome, right by the Spanish Steps now.
Oh, I was there a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And that's the only city I went to in Italy. I was there 2.5 days. 1 day of work and 1.5 days of miles and miles and miles of walking and a lot of pasta.
Yeah, it's an interesting neighborhood because at the other corner of that piazza from the Spanish Steps is Università, the Italian National University. So I was there for 3 days. When was it? I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so. Okay. Yeah, interesting setup. It's a music school, and I was doing like Broken Eight stuff there actually. And it's all the furniture is like 600-800 years old. It's all antiques. It's like, no, I better not sit in that, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, going off on another Carl tangent, but just the thing that blew me away is, you know, I never actually went out of the overseas until I was 54. Yeah, the first overseas was Dubai, which is a real interesting experience.
Really?
Time, especially. And then I went to Europe a few months later. England, London. And I've been there, I don't know, 9 or 10 times maybe, and around England a bunch, and Ireland and Portugal and France and, I don't know, Italy and a bunch of places. But what really blew me away is the architecture, the buildings in, let's say, England and Ireland, how old they are. And then I went to Rome. That's like 2,000 years old, and there's like pillars sticking up that were part of some structure 2,000 years. There's a church there, an open. It's kind of a circular thing. And my friend Federico, who lives there, took me out to dinner. We're kind of in the same business, what we do. And I met him in New York City through somebody we used to teach for, both of us. He taught over there, I taught over here. But anyways, he explained that this church was built about 2,000 years ago, and there's no roof, but somehow the way it is structured, it captures the wind in this circular manner where rain cannot come in. So if you go there, you will not get rained on. And it has a really cool entrance, this massive building, 2,000 years old. I mean, you know, Rochester, England, I went through a castle. It was a Rochester Castle built in 604. How the heck did they do that? I mean, this thing is massive. Well,
Slowly. Slowly.
Maybe the aliens came and helped. So I just broke the conversation. Let's go back. This is what happens, folks.
Okay.
If I'm in the mix, it's going to go in a couple of tangents here and there. How about what are some other examples of broken eighths that you're fond of, that you like to listen to, or is there anything you recommend to any of us?
Yeah, on page 52 of that book, there's the most influential, and there's about 50 tunes that I used in the class. And
that's the other book. That's the concepts book, right?
Yeah, the rhythm. That's the Broken Eighth book. You don't have
that one. Okay.
Yeah, and so I have a URL list that goes to the students or whoever buys the book. I just send you the link so you can go and listen to the music. Unfortunately, a lot of the ECM stuff is not allowed on YouTube. So they've closed it out so that it can't be accessed by that. So
Yeah.
you have to figure out something else. Maybe Spotify, but that's not one that I use. I'm always trying to use one that's free for students to access.
Yeah, right.
So you have to live with all the URLs that I supply. You have to live through the ads that precede the tuning. But it's because it's not supposed to be. You have to spend money to find out things now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm doing that for the book you have in your hands. I'll send you later today the URL list for all the tunes that are at the end of each chapter.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so all those old tunes are on YouTube.
If you don't know about this book, friends, drummer or not, you're going to want to check it out. Because, the original title, of course, was The Beat, the Body, and the Brain. Well, now it's World Fusion Drumming. But what I love, it's real succinct. You wrote in 3 pages what it took me 500 pages to write, basically, Skip. The space between the words, that's what I need to work on.
Yeah, it's all
less
the
words,
same.
Say more with less words. But the way you have it broken down into examples, like, for example, here's a list of drummers to check out who made substantial contributions through the years to this type of playing. I mean, you'll go through a specific type of playing, and then you have the list of players.
Yeah, they're alphabetical.
What's that?
They're alphabetical.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the ones that's missing on that is Tony Thundersmith, and he never lets me forget it.
Tony Smith? Tony
Thundersmith, yeah.
Is he the Tony Smith who's on the Jan Hammer, Jeff Beck CD?
Yeah.
The live one?
Yeah, and he teaches it in the same office as me sometimes with his class.
Oh, so he's Berkeley based. I always wonder what happened to him because
he was.
I think he might have played on a John McLaughlin album too. Maybe.
Yes. Yep. So the fact that he's not listed in those fusion influential guys is, I can't do anything about it now, but I try to make sure everybody knows that he was a more than worthy addition to that list. Yeah. And he played with Lou Reed a lot later on in the 90s, even in this century, because I was in Cinque Terre, La Spezia, and he was there with Lou Reed, and I saw the sign. It was like, what? So we have that joke in common.
Well, Stuart Heinrich, did you know Tony Smith? Because Stu played with Lou Reed in the 70s.
Yeah, no, I don't know anything about Lou Reed. I only know about
Stu Heinrich
Tony.
Is a friend of mine. We played in a band, just one band ever together for maybe not even a year that we were both in the band at the same time. But Stu's written some great stuff. He's this beautiful guitarist. I just love the way he plays. And, he likes planes. He's a pilot. He's been a pilot for decades. That's his job. I like planes too, but I'm not a pilot. But Stu, if you're still watching, do you know Tony Smith? Because you were with Lou Reed. I'm just curious.
I think the Tony stuff might have been later.
Yeah, it might have been, yeah.
This century.
Stu was sometime in the 70s. I don't know when. I think he's on a few recordings. And, yeah. Wow, really cool. So Tony's there in Berkeley.
Yeah, he's one of the 40. There's 40 of us in the percussion department.
That's man, you've got like an all-star team there. You and Terry Lynn and who else? I mean, Sergio.
Yeah, Kenwood Denard, Dave DeSenza. Yeah, Kenwood's been there for like 20 years now.
Oh man, I was just
Dave DeSenzo.
Sergio's here. Hey, we're just talking about you, Sergio, the all-star percussion department professors at Berkeley, and you're one of them, Sergio.
Bertram Lehman.
You also say so. Kenwood is there. I was just watching some Kenwood with Jocko a few days ago. Right,
he's with Sting. He's on that ballad that's on Dream of Blue Turtles. Maybe it is. It's great. He's on that.
Kenwood is.
Yeah, with Sting. Yeah.
I have that on vinyl. I got that because Branford and Omar were on it. I think it's Omar.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. He was on that band, the Live in Paris stuff. He's got a great solo in 3 that's in that thing. That's, great stuff.
Oh man.
But that's from, the tune is called, with Kenwood Sting, it's called Little Wing.
Oh, that's a classic from.
Dream of Blue Turtles or somewhere around that time period.
Yeah. Oh, so Kenwood is there. You, Terry Lynn, Sergio,
Steve
John
Wilkes,
Ramsey.
Francisco Mela, Gustavo Aggiello,
I feel like I
Ed
need lessons all of
Saindon,
a sudden.
Larry Finn, Joe DeArango.
Oh. Wow.
I'm not Joe DeArango, so he's a guitar player. Joe Galeota. And
Oh, Sergio, I'm sorry to interrupt. Sergio just clarified. Kenwood is on the Nothing Like the Sun.
oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah, Nothing Like the Sun. Okay, with Little Wing by Hendrix.
yeah.
I was trying to remember who the heck did Little Wing. Yeah, Hendrix, of course. Wow, that's pretty cool. Well,
Yeah, there's over the years, a lot of different people. Kim Plainfield was there, Ed Uribe,
oh, wow.
Ed Kaspic, John Ramsey, John Hazilla.
Mark Walker,
Yes, I'm sorry, yes, Mark.
Larry Finn,
Um,
Joe Galeota, Bertram Lehman. I'm
mhm.
saying these because Sergio typed them. Thank you, Sergio. Mark Mahoney's watching. Hey, Mark, what's up, man?
Yeah, and he knows who all the guys were too, because he studied there too. But you go and you end up having a choice. Very rarely does someone study with you for a long time, because there's so many different avenues that you're exposed to. It's common if they're there for the whole 8 semesters that they might study with 8 different people.
Yeah.
Jamie Haddad was there for a long time. Jerry Leake, yeah. And
That's
Sergio's
really
probably typing the rest of the names out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool though. That's what an all-star cast, man. I was talking with Teresa.
Iggy Castillo.
Yesterday. We were communicating, and it won't be long. I'm going to get out there to hang out. I want to see you.
We're live coming up in the end of this month. We'll be there live.
Oh, great. Yeah, I want to meet Sergio and his wife, Terry. I want to see... thanks for the link, Sergio. I just sent a link to the percussion faculty. And just, Johnny D and Therese, of course, and just come out and meet people in person. It'll be my post-vaccine celebration with fellow musicians.
Yeah, that was one of those things of being inspired of people's travels. I'm wearing my Tony Bahama shirt because my daughter's in Turks and Caicos this week. So I was like, I can't be on the beach, but I can dress like it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. So, as with my usual Wednesday schedule,
you got to jump in the car.
I have a victim I need to see at 12:30.
Not a patient? Okay.
A patient, yeah. And then I'm done. I have an early day today, so I'm going to come back home, and I don't know what I'll do, but I've always had things to do. So, always a pleasure, my friend. I'm good for the foreseeable future on Wednesdays at 11, if you are, and we can communicate about this. But thank you, Skip.
Sure. And if anybody has anything that they want to know about, or jump in, because it's not that we're looking for stuff, but for me, I want it to be something about what you want to know as opposed to just what I want to talk about.
True. That's a good idea. I do that with a movement thing that I do on Mondays, and after a few just talking head kind of things between Russ and me, we decided to set topics and so but we like to get topics from people. So I would love it if anyone wants to comment on Facebook and drop us a note, inbox me, and if there's something you want to hear about, Skip is the man. I'm just a guy with a microphone who likes to listen to Skip because I learn a lot.
Thank you, man. Yeah, today I was going to do the stuff about the rhythmic matrix, but if we can do that another time, it'd be great. Remember that thing I kept trying to put in the chat that we shared at the beginning?
You know what? I let's do it.
No, we'll do it another time because it's one of the things like hopefully somebody will want to know about, including you, and then I get to explain what it was and where it came from.
Let's put that on for next week, and then if anyone has any suggestions, please inbox me, comment. I read all the comments. And Mark Mahoney, are you Boston based? Are you around there?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So I'll see Mark when I come out too. I don't have a date
I think
yet.
Mark's in Gardner or something close like that.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll put it in what it is.
I think in June, July, or August I'll come out. It really depends upon some other travel things going on. And my son's moving here, and I'll be helping him come from Atlanta here. So we'll see what happens. But I'll get out there. We'll plan ahead. And, we could do a live show together.
Yeah, from the back deck, we can do a show.
There you go. Perfect. Well,
overlooking the ocean, we can do a show like, oh, yeah.
No, there's
Ching.
a good idea. So thank you, Scott, Thelma, who I'm going to talk with soon, Mary Lambert, Stu, Sergio, Mark Mahoney, and Skip. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Carl. Take care
I'll
of yourself.
I'll post this up on YouTube later tonight. If anyone misses it, they can go right and check it out on YouTube and check out. It'll be in a playlist. You just go, and I think there are 10 other episodes. So always a pleasure, my friend. I will see you next week. I'll talk to you before then.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.
Always a pleasure. Take care now. See you later, everybody.
Ci vediamo dopo.
Okay. Bye-bye. Hasta luego.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.